Lauren, last time we sat down was at the Seeds Canada semi-annual meeting last fall. You talked to me about coming into the seed regulatory sphere after working with Alberta wheat and barley. Now, you liken the experience of working in policy to learning to drive in downtown Toronto in rush hour during a snowstorm. Now, things are always changing in this realm. You've been intimately involved in SRM for months now. What's the biggest positive to come out of that process so far?
I think not a lot has changed in a year really on SRM, and I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone, but it is a 5-year process, and it takes a lot of time to gather the information and build the recommendations and go out and consult. And I think since we last spoke, the winter consultation was carried out, and we still don't have sort of a what we heard report from that. But I think what the consultation maybe gave everyone a taste of was that it's really complicated. It's I would say it's impossible for someone who is not familiar with the seed regs, who hasn't read them over, hasn't worked in that regulated part of the industry, to comment on how they should change. I think it's easier maybe to paint the picture of what does success look like, as opposed to what do we need to fix or change about the system we have now. And I think that's where maybe I'm a bit disappointed in how the process has evolved. And I mean, I say this having started in the process part way. So it's always easy to be sort of that armchair critic. But, I think you should always sort of start with the vision of what does success look like, especially given that we had an opportunity to build a system, to make significant change. I think, we still have the challenge that by looking at the status quo and saying, do we tweak one way or another? What I suspect we may end up with is very much the status quo with insignificant adjustments.
A big highlight this year is the benchmarking study from John Groenewegen of JRG Consulting. It's meant to compare Canada's seed system to others around the world, talking about, how we stack up compared to them. When you think about our system, Lauren, how are we doing? How competitive are we to others around the world? And what do we need to change? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really liked the report. And again, easy to be an armchair critic when you're not having to do all the work of designing the consultation. But I really wish that had been done right up front, because I think it would have helped in that exercise to imagine what does success look like. I think I wrote a piece for Germination on some of the takeaways that I personally had. But I think, there are different models of seed systems, and they all do function successfully. And I think Canada has an opportunity to take the best pieces of every model to create sort of the dream success model. One of the biggest takeaways I think I had, a bit of an aha moment from someone who's still fairly new to the seed sector, was what variety registration means and looks like across the world. Coming from a wheat and barley background, variety registration is a pretty rigid system. You go to the Prairie Grains Development Committee, the PGDC system, your varieties have to go through several years of testing. They're looked at by 100 eyes of experts, and sort of decided if they pass muster or not. And then they're maybe let in, and then it leads to the grain classification system from there. And of course, we have crop types that aren't subject to registration and crop types that are subject to registration, but with less merit criteria and everything in between. And internationally, they have systems where it's more of a listing, and I think there's a lot of value in having that listing of everything being sold in a country. But then performance and what actually is sold is more of a market decision. So if there's no real risk to the environment of a product being sold, then leave it up to a distributor to decide if they want to market that variety. Leave it up to a farmer to decide if they want to purchase that variety. It's a bit complicated in Canada, especially for wheat and barley. Of course, we're always the problem child crops in that regard. But I think everyone should read the report and reflect on, do we really need to do everything that we do to have a successful system? And are we throwing up barriers to bringing in some very needed innovation?
Lauren, I recently interviewed you about the guidance from CFIA concerning gene editing. CFIA finally came out and said that it's not going to regulate gene-edited products the same way it would regulate GMOs. Now, this is separate from SRM specifically, but all these things are interrelated at the end of the day, as you know. How do you think this will help the seed industry?
It'll be interesting to see. Again, when we talk about registration, mind always goes to wheat and barley with the most stringent registration requirements. And those are two crops that don't have a history of any sort of, GMO in commercial production. Canola, of course, we already have GMO canola, GMO corn, GMO soy, although, corn's not subject to registration. So, the acceptance of gene-edited products will likely be, not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But it'll be interesting to see the acceptance and the evolution of gene-edited cereal products, and what types of traits are brought into those products. It it could sort of eliminate the concern to get many of the diseases that are linked to merit criteria or the quality. It may just be sort of a standard edit in the future that we incorporate this package and then we have something more. So you may have sort of the standard package, and that standard package makes sure that the variety has everything required to be marketed in Canada. I don't know. It really remains to be seen. I think that's sort of the ultimate dream, but I don't think it's going to be tomorrow. So it might be something that, in 10 years' time, we're looking at the criteria again.
Now, Lauren, before I let you go, we're going to sit down again a year from now in Edmonton at the Seeds Canada annual meeting. Where do you see this organization being a year from now? There's another couple years for the SRM process to play out, but in 12 months, is there one big thing you hope to have seen accomplished by then?
Yeah, Seeds Canada has been talking about our industry advisory committee, the ISSB, and the independent standard setting body. And, that's a group that we view as providing advice and to CFIA and setting standards with regards to the seed regulations. And I hope, within the next year, we're able to develop a business case and really build a consensus. But that group's really important. And I think it's the independence of it that is so important. The seed system has changed so dramatically since the inception of the seed regulations that, I think we need to reconsider what the intentions or the purpose is of the regulations, and also reconsider who the players are in the sector. And I think about, how the wheat industry has evolved. When I joined the wheat industry, it was just after the single desk had been dissolved with the Canadian Wheat Board. And, up to that point, they were really the major player. And as the sector evolved, the players involved, the players at the table making decisions evolved as well. So you had the creation of Cereals Canada, and that brought together all sorts of new players to the table to have a voice in the wheat world. And I think it's made the wheat sector really strong. And I think that same thing needs to happen in the seed sector. We need to look at the evolution of who's making investments, who's playing in the field in Canada, and make sure that, if you're making a significant investment in Canada, you have a voice when it comes to the seed regulations and how your products are regulated. So I hope that there is a bit of a shift in terms of the decision making and the power dynamic there, because I think it's important to be inclusive and it's important to have diverse voices at the table. It makes for a better industry overall and for better decision making.